Definitely the most epic aspect of the PS5 has to be its controller, the DualSense. It is more than an evolution of the previous controllers, it is a radical change for everything that PS5 represents. It has triggers that dynamically adapt its resistance, an extremely precise vibration, a set of microphones to record your voice, and best of all, a lot of secrets, tips, and curiosities that we will show you in this video.
Super players.
Although there are already DualSense controllers with colors other than white, such as red or black, these controllers are more expensive than the DualSense with the original colors, which in itself are relatively expensive. However, many people are unaware that the DualSense has a part that you can remove with your own hands. That's right, this allows you to modify the look of your DualSense with just a few dollars without having to buy a new one and spend a lot of money. Sure, you probably know that the DualSense controller works wirelessly through Bluetooth, but have you ever wondered, where is the Bluetooth sync button on the DualSense? All Bluetooth devices are supposed to have it, right? Well, if you haven't found it, it's because it literally doesn't exist. The only way to put the DualSense into pairing mode is by holding down the PlayStation button and the share button at the same time until the lights on the controller start to flash. That way, you are ready to pair your DualSense with a compatible device that supports Bluetooth. And since now we know how to pair our DualSense, surely you are curious about which devices are compatible with this controller. I have good news for you. The DualSense works with almost everything. It works with PCs, with Android devices, and even with iPhones, iPads, iPod Touches, and even Apple TVs. So in short, there are a lot of devices that are compatible. So yeah, the DualSense is a good option to have a modern and good quality control, even without having a PS5. Some people know that the DualSense has an included microphone that, in addition to allowing you to talk with your friends without the need for headphones, it also allows you to interact with some games. What few people know is that it is not a single microphone, but several microphones that are used together to reduce the noise that is around you and make you hear yourself better. Also, if you don't want to use this mic, you can press the mute button to mute it, and you will see an amber light come on indicating that the mic is not active. But did you know that if you keep the mute button pressed for a few seconds, you can make your PS5 not emit any sound? It's true! This is an extremely practical way to mute your console without having to use your TV remote control. However, a really bad thing about these microphones that few people know is that by default, they are always on. Sony, for its part, believes that this is a way to capture your emotion and excitement when getting a trophy in a game, and yet many people feel that this is actually a violation to their privacy. But don't worry, don't be one of those people who tape microphones and cameras because they don't trust Big Brother. True super players know that the PS5 has an option that allows you to mute the DualSense by default. That way you can play quietly without feeling like someone is listening. Although in principle, having a microphone and a controller sounds like a great idea, in practice, it really is not. The best way to communicate with your friends using a DualSense will always be with a headset. Of course, the DualSense microphones can be useful for sending a quick voice memo or getting on voice chat while searching for your headset, but the quality will never beat just wearing a pair of good headphones. Also, did you know that when using the DualSense microphones, you automatically lose power on the adaptive triggers? This is true. This is because since the microphones are inside the controller, the DualSense adapts to offer less resistance and make your voice less noisy. Anyway, you lose power in the adaptive triggers and your voice sounds worse. It's a good gimmick, but please, for the sake of everyone's ears, wear headphones. Also, if you could buy a PS5, I think you could probably afford headphones, right? Haha. And speaking about adaptive triggers, if you have not had the opportunity to use a DualSense, believe us when we tell you that it is one of the coolest things. Not all games implement this functionality, but those that do really add another level of immersion. For example, in shooters, you may feel the triggers change resistance depending on the weapon in your hands. The feel is very convincing, and for single-player games, they make everything feel more real. But for multiplayer games that are more competitive, they may actually put you at a disadvantage precisely because this resistance will slow you down by making the triggers harder and slower to press. The good thing is that you can deactivate the adaptive triggers functionality of the DualSense in the configuration menu of your console, and you can activate them again when you are playing something a little more casual. Don't tell me you turn off your controller using the PS5 menu. I mean, you press the PlayStation button, then Accessories, then you select your controller, and finally you give the option to turn off. Nah, true super players hold down the PS button for 10 seconds. And this makes the DualSense turn off without having to navigate through any menu. And yes, although this method is slower than the traditional way, it is easier to remember. And also, if you use this controller on PC, Android, or iOS, this is literally the only way to turn off the DualSense without having a PS5. So you better get familiar with it. One of the most iconic visual aspects of the DualSense has to be its LED lights that, as we all know, can change color. In games that support this functionality, the DualSense will change the color of its lights depending on the context of the game, and likewise, these lights can be recognized by the camera used by the PSVR, and are also used to indicate that your controller is charging. However, many people are unaware that apart from the colored lights, there are other small white LED lights that are used to indicate which player you are. That is, player number 1 has only 1 light on, player number 2 has 2, and so on until 4 lights are on. I bet you didn't know that little detail, right? Another of the most interesting curiosities of the DualSense is that in addition to all the devices that we have mentioned, you can also use it with a PS3, which is quite cool. But the strangest thing is that you cannot use it with a PS4. That's right. Neither by cable nor by synchronizing via Bluetooth. It just can't be done. It's even in the official Sony documentation. This may change in the future with an update, but at the moment, it is not possible. This is even weirder, considering that you can use PS4 controllers for PS4 games on a PS5. The DualShock 4 was infamous for its short battery life, and that is why the DualSense has a larger battery. This is necessary because this controller has much more technology, and precisely because of that, the bigger battery does not necessarily make the battery last much longer than the previous controller. Obviously, features such as adaptive triggers and the built-in microphones cause additional energy to be consumed, but you can save energy by using some of these tips. For example, the DualSense always stays on by default. Therefore, we recommend that you change this setting so that it turns off after a while without it being used. Likewise, you can decrease the intensity of the lights, the strength of the vibration, the volume of the speaker integrated in the controller, and even the intensity of the adaptive triggers. That way you can make your DualSense battery last much longer. If for some reason your DualSense is having problems connecting to your console, or is disconnecting spontaneously, or simply behaves strangely, you can reset it, using this official method recommended by Sony. To do this, find a pointy object, and insert it into this hole until you press the button inside it for 5 seconds. Once this is done, you can connect the DualSense to your console using a USB-C cable, and your controller will be working like new. Another super interesting detail of the DualSense is that it has a texture on the back that allows you to hold the controller more firmly in your hands. This detail is important because if you sweat from your hands, you can still continue playing without major problems. But the coolest thing is that if you pay attention and get as close as possible to this texture, you will realize that it is full of PlayStation icons. It is not very easy to see with the naked eye, but this same texture is also on the console itself, and is one of the coolest details of the DualSense and the PS5. Have you ever wondered what happens if a friend comes to your house and brings his DualSense to play with you? But you can't find your USB-C cable to pair it to the PS5? How do you synchronize your friend's controller? Easy! Put it in pairing mode and look for it in the Bluetooth accessories option. That way you can add that other controller without having a cable nearby. And to wrap it up, if you are really lazy typing to your friends using your DualSense, or even using your phone with the PlayStation app, there is a much more comfortable option that could be useful. When you go to write a message, press the button with the microphone icon, say the message you want to send to your friend through the DualSense microphone, and it will automatically start writing it for you. This way you can write a lot of things, making the slightest effort. Definitely one of the most awesome secrets of the PlayStation 5 DualSense.
Super players.